and the partridge lifted slightly prematurely, but way out from us. But no need to worry, he was just commanding it, and he just like from a bird at that pitch, you don't see anything. You hear the roar. In this particular instance, which I've seen him do many times, he went straight through the covey and took the lead bird out.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the Falconry Told podcast, brought to you in part by Marshall Radio Telemetry, the makers of the most carefully engineered and reliable tracking systems available. For more information on their awesome products, like their GPS system, head to marshallradio.com. And we're also partially brought to you by North Gin Raptors, and they want you to know that whatever your hunting style is, they have your falconry bird needs covered. So if you're interested in putting down a deposit or finding out more information about their diverse genetic lines that they offer, just send them an email at info@northginfalcons.com. And we're also brought to you by the Falconry Fund, which is an organization dedicated to support and protect the various arts and practices of falconry and the cultural and environmental assets that make it possible. And right now they have a sweepstakes going on that they want to make you aware of. It's the Red Grouse Sweepstakes, and if you win, it will allow you to take a step back in time to experience classic medieval falconry in the north of England. And for whoever wins, they're going to have an incredible time seeing a very wide range of falconry in a pretty short amount of time. So Simon and I discussed this more in the podcast, but for more information, you can go to falconryfund.org/redgrouse-sweepstakes. So I was happy that the audio quality turned out to be all right for this episode. Normally we like to stay away from doing the remote podcast for the obvious reasons of the technical and internet bandwidth issues that a lot of people face, but Simon was nice enough to give me a little over an hour of his time, and we felt that it was important to also get the message out a little bit more about the Falconry Fund Red Grouse Sweepstakes. So I think without further ado, I think I'm just going to turn things over to this conversation with Simon and hope you all get something out of it and enjoy it. So here we go. All right, I think we are rolling officially. So Simon, thank you so much for taking the time to join me this morning. And it was good finally getting a chance to kind of chat and meet you over chat with and meet you over Facebook yesterday, but I really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully the audio and everything turns out well with this, and everybody will get something out of it. But how are you? I mean, are things still good with the manning process with your birds?
Yeah, hi John. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me onto the podcast. Real privilege. I don't know whether you've had anybody outside the United States before, but no, it's a real honor to be included. But now things are good over here. We are, as you know, in the middle of manning 2 new Falcons. Good day today. Yeah, things are progressing nicely. No real concerns with either of them now. One of them, as I mentioned to you, spent quite a considerable time in a hack chamber, a little bit longer than I would like, but no, he's going in the direction I want him to now. So yeah, onwards and upwards.
Good. Well, I mean, you're most welcome. And, like I said, I'm always happy to try and experiment with new things. Normally we like I was telling you yesterday, we normally like to stick to in-person type deals. It's a little bit more interpersonal, and, I don't have to deal with as much of the audio issues and stuff after the fact with editing and all that good stuff. But like I said, it's a pleasure having you on, and, like I said, you're most welcome. And yeah, we've had a few people from the international community, but they were kind of already in the U.S. They weren't sitting all the way across the pond, so to speak. Whenever we were doing this. So
yeah,
but yeah, no, it's awesome that you've got 2 new birds going. And tell me a little bit more about how you go about your product, like what goes into your selection of birds, what kind of prey base do you have where you live, things like that, just to kind of give me a little bit more, and the listeners a little bit more background about kind of where you're located and the falconry in your area.
Okay. I'm located central in the UK, the Midlands, as it's referred to. Central in the country, I hunt predominantly now low ground quarry, partridges and pheasants. I'll go into my history a little bit later,
sure,
where you'll see I've done all the grouse and lots of other things. But now I'm at a stage where I concentrate purely on lowland game hawking, partridge and pheasants. I'm quite specific with the type of falcons I like to use. All parent reared. I don't have imprints. Again, I've flown all the types of imprints, but I always prefer my natural choice is parent reared. I do go along with this modern technique, which is being done now, where instead of wild hacking or tame hacking, the birds spend a period in a very, very large hack pen or chamber or flight pen. You can refer it to as you wish, but a very large area with a number of other falcons, 40 other falcons. And normally it's about a 3-week period. One of them this year, through various factors, one, he was a very early bird, and then issues with bird flu over here where birds couldn't be exported. He meant he spent over 6 weeks in there, but he'll train. He's doing fine. But I do like them in there. I prefer them in there rather than coming straight out of a breeding chamber at 8 weeks. I like them to have another 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks maturity, a little bit of interaction with other siblings and other birds. They learn to maneuver. They learn how to basically fly. They don't come out of there fit by any means, but they know the basics on flying, which is a great advantage with the following training. I do match my falcons size-wise to the quarry I hunt, which is where the Specialist Falcon, the book that obviously I recently published, that came to fruition through my ideas on my choice of falcon and why I do it. I fly one particular type of falcon at partridge and then another one at pheasants, which by matching the falcons suitably to the quarry, I think you get best out of both, best out the quarry and best out the falcon. Currently, I'm flying this season. I'll be flying actually 4 hybrids, 3 at partridge and 1 at pheasants. I normally fly pure gears, but this year I was gifted quite a large Gyr peregrine male, which has always been my second choice for pheasants after a pure Gyr. For partridge, I like small Gyr hybrids. My favourites being Gyr Barbaries. I've flown them for many, many years. The flying ability, etc. They can cope with the weather conditions we get here in the UK far better than a Tiercel. I'm a huge fan of Gyrs. I love Gyrs, got a real passion for them. So anything with a bit of Gyr in is always of interest to me. I've tried a new one this year. This is the one that's been in the hack chamber a bit longer, and that's a Gyr cross Black Shaheen, which when I go into my history, I can tell you a little bit more about the birds I've flown and why I came to where I am. I'm fortunate that I can fly every day of the season, weather permitting. So yeah, keeps me busy.
Sounds like it. Sounds like you've been a pretty busy man over the past couple years, especially. I mean, between taking on the project of writing a book and manning all these different birds and hunting almost every day. It sounds like I mean, you kind of live in the falconer's dream there.
Yeah, I think I can say I've been very fortunate to do that throughout my life. From my main career, from early 20s, I secured a position as a professional falconer, but a falconer in the true sense, the traditional sense. I was employed solely to train falcons and hawks for my employer for hunting and nothing else. Train the dogs to go with it, manage a small sporting estate as well for falconry. And yeah, I did that for 18 seasons, which was living the dream. And then since then, I've moved on with career, but I was fortunate that I could retire 6 years ago nearly now, which now enables me to do what I'm doing, and that's hawking every day of the season, which, yeah, very blessed to say the least.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I guess, that's an opportunity that most people, I think, in our sport and our cultural heritage would would sacrifice limbs for in a lot of instances. But yeah, no, I think this will be a good time to go ahead and segue to your background. Then, I mean, you already kind of talked about having the opportunity to do this somewhat as a career for a decent chunk of your life. Well, I mean, let's go ahead and just start like we do it at almost every point in this podcast, and get into your background. How'd you get into how'd you develop the love for falconry?
Right. Well, it goes back over 50 years now, my participation in falconry. I originated from a town called Nottingham, which is an hour from where I'm located now. My father was a coal miner, but had a very, very deep passion for the countryside, shooting in particular, and all things nature, which he sort of instilled in me right from the word go. And I developed the same sort of interest in nature. I used to accompany him shooting and everything when I was very young. Developed a real interest in birds in particular, all sorts, and used to acquire various nestlings of anything from magpies to crows to jays that I would hand rear. And then in 1969, there was an iconic British film came out called Kes, which was, again, about a young lad from a coal mining town in Yorkshire who got himself a kestrel. And I was taken to see that by my mother. I can remember vividly to this day going to the cinema to see it. And it had a massive impact on me. I'd never at that stage heard of falconry. So I started to investigate and look into it. And back in those days, trying to find active falconers was very, very difficult. Very few and far between. It was almost secretive in those days. But I was a very determined young man. And I managed to source a kestrel, which I started with in 1970. And went about acquiring books. The first one was Woodford's Manual of Falconry. The second one, which I had for the following Christmas, was Mavrogadato's Falcon in the Field, which that had quite a profound effect on me. And one particular part in that book was a plate of 4 gearheads, a picture of 4 gearheads. That is where my gear passion started, because in those days, particularly in the UK, you never saw gear falcons. So that started me on the road to this obsession with gear falcons. But my basic falconry career from then onwards, for the first couple of years, was basically on my own. My father, he helped me. Both parents encouraged me to follow my dreams and do what I like. So I started with kestrels. I had a buzzard. And then by chance, I came across a guy who lived not too far away who flew goshawks. So being the type of lad I was, I pestered this guy, knocking on his door day and night. And he agreed to take me under his wing, but the agreement was that I manned his goshawks for him. And I think at the time he must have had the best manned goshawks that were going, because I lived with these birds. And being then a young lad with these huge goshawks, it was great. But the deal was, them sufficiently, I would be taken hunting, which I did. And the guy didn't have a dog, so I was the replacement. I used to beat for him. And anyway, I saw goshawks hunting. And again, my passion went to another level. I was clearly a hunter by heart and needed to do it with hawks. So back in those days, the only thing that was readily available was sparrowhawks, which we could acquire. I did eventually get into goshawks as well, which I flew all the way through my teens, and met up through a small hawking club that was going at the time called the East Midlands Hawking Club. I joined that and met a guy there who is now my hawking partner, and we've hawked together since we were teenagers and still do to this day. Very, very good friend. We flew goshawks all the way through our teens. My chosen career or choice of career was to be, my mother actually has a recording. I was interviewed on a local radio station because I appeared on a children's TV program with a hawk, and on the back of that I was interviewed on the local radio station when I was about 12, and they asked me what I wanted to do for a career, and my first answer was, well, I want to be a falconer, a professional falconer. But knowing how rare those positions were, My second choice was to be a gamekeeper, which was countryside related and would enable me to be out there doing what I love. So I did actually find a position as a gamekeeper, but that didn't come to fruition through various reasons. So I went into other lines of work temporarily just to make a bit of money. And then in the early 80s, a position came along as falconer for who is now the late John Fairclough, who was the director of the BFC, the British Falconers Club. He was treasurer at the time. I worked for him, but then he went on to be director as well. And it was the job of a lifetime to go and train hawks every day, to be involved with hawks every day, just for hunting, to train dogs, pointers, spaniels, all the rest of it. And it was marvellous. We had 2 months grouse hawking every summer. We'd venture north to Scotland. We'd rent. Initially, it was a 30,000 acre grouse moor where we'd spend from early August through till early October, say a good 2 months grouse hawking, which was a real eye-opener. I mean, up until that time, I dabbled with a few falcons, etc., but I was very well orientated with short wings. Long wings, waiting on flights with long wings was a new concept. But I knew enough to get by. And 3 months after starting the job, I found myself travelling north with a huge team of falcons. The first season, I had 9 falcons in the team to fly, which was, I had my work cut out, obviously. Now, flying that amount of birds, we had an A team and a B team. The A team would go out in the morning and the B team in the afternoon. But this is where I sort of cut my teeth on game hawking. Fortunately, the first year I didn't have any new falcons to train. They were all made or semi-made hawks. And I caught my first grouse with a particular falcon called Jade, who was a 3/4 peregrine quarter black Shaheen. It wasn't a spectacular flight, but it was my very first grouse, and I have a picture to this day. And there's actually a picture in the book that we've written. And it went from there. And over the following 18 years, I built up a very good relationship with John Fairclough. And after a few years, he trusted me enough to be guided by me and my ambitions and my thoughts on falconry. And it was at that time where I think the seeds of the Specialist Falcon were born, because we were flying all these falcons, far too many falcons to start with. And to catch red grouse with a female peregrine is not that difficult. To catch them on a very regular basis with a tiercel is a different ball game. So it was then I started to look at trying to find something that big tiercels are flying at £1.9, £1.10 few and far between, very few and far between. So I started looking at various hybrids, and this eventually led me to where I am now with the Geobarbaries. Perfect mid-range size falcon, which has to perform well to match the quarry it's being flown at. And this is where we went with the career, reducing the number of falcons we were flying, but getting more for performance. In the early days, it was about catching grouse, and we caught grouse. We caught a lot of grouse. Jade in particular, I've just mentioned. I have my record books which would show that I've often caught 2 brace in an afternoon with that one falcon, and we'd have sometimes 3, 4, 5 falcons on the hill, and we were catching grouse. I think in the 18 seasons, I've caught over 1,000 red grouse. But when I look back to the early days, then the quality was nothing on the scale of what we're doing now. Back in the day, it was order of the day was we have to catch grouse. There's a huge investment gone in. We have to catch them. Don't get me wrong. There were nice flights for the day. But something inside of me was saying, no, we can do better. If we get away from the numbers and get onto the quality, the sport is going to improve. And that's the way we ended up going. We reduced the falcons down to 3 or 4. We would take a goshawk with us for morning hunting. Up in Scotland, there was such an abundance of rabbits. So we would rabbit hawk in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I was out game hawking with the long wings, and that for 2 months. I mean, it's everybody's dream to do it. On return from Scotland, we wouldn't fly all the falcons. We would pick one or two and we'd fly those through the season at pheasants, partridge, duck or whatever. John Fairclough would do an awful lot of shooting. So it was basically down to me. I was hawking for myself and being paid to do it for most of the season, which was a bigger bonus. I mean, fantastic. I mean, it was a job of a lifetime. But as with a lot of these jobs of a lifetime, the salary doesn't really match it. And the salary wasn't the best. So I had to find a way of subsidising it. Well, unbeknown to me, or I hadn't noticed, I was also developing a very good ability to train dogs of various types for working with the hawks and the falcons and for gun dogs. And what people always used to mention to me how good my dogs were, which I train them to do what I want them to do in the way I want them to do it. And it was one of John Fairclough's friends who used to do a little bit of shooting with us. He knew the generosity of my employer, and he'd got a young Labrador, and he said, look, I'm too busy to train this dog. How about I pay you to do it? Which obviously, yes, a little bit extra money on the side. I'd got a young family at the time. Yeah, okay. So we did that. We took this dog on and he paid me a sum of money for doing it. I was out working on a local shoot another day, and there was a guy there with a very, very unruly Springer Spaniel. And he questioned me at lunchtime, how on earth do you keep those 5 spaniels under control all at the same time without a lead? Can you show me how to do it? So he says, if I come and see you at the end of the season, will you teach me? And I'll pay you to do it. So again, I could then see this other way of making money. And John Fairclough was fully aware of what I was doing. He was a self-made man. And he encouraged me to build the business as well on the side, which didn't affect what I was doing for him, but allowed me to make some extra money. So I started training dogs and teaching people, and I built up a very successful gun dog training business that was known as Hawcroft Gun Dogs, which we ended up having phenomenal success. It got to the point where after 18 years of being with John Fairclough, obviously you have to look at the future. You have to look at the direction you're going. And although it was the job of a lifetime, I made the hard decision that it's time to go, time to leave, time to move on, because I could see the way the gun dog business was going, and this could put me in a very, very good financial position if I do it right and commit to it. So I made the heartbreaking decision to walk away from my dream job, leaving behind birds that I'd trained, dogs that I'd bred for generations, and had to walk away from it. Again, I left on very good terms with John. He understood where I was going and what I needed to do, and that was it. And it was a very, very hard thing to do, but it worked out. I committed myself for a number of years to the dogs, and we were hugely successful. We went on to build a phenomenal gun dog training business. We made up 13 field trial champions, spaniels, predominantly Cocker Spaniels, a few Springers. We won the British Championships, Cocker Championships on a number of occasions. The highlight being 2008, where it was at Sandringham, which is one of the estates owned by the royal family. And I was presented with prizes by Her Majesty the Queen, which was, a huge honour, huge highlight of the career. But I always needed to get back seriously to falconry. And myself and my wife, Julie, we worked very, very hard at the business. We moved property to where we are now and established a luxury boarding kennel for people when they go on holiday, which Julie now runs with her team of girls. That enabled me to retire from the gun dogs 5.5 years ago. So we've been hugely successful. We'd sent many dogs out to the USA, many dogs. Majority of those will be Cocker Spaniels, but I still have a very successful line of Cockers, which are the Timsgary line, which are 100% pure Cockers. And they were in much demand, not just in the States, but all over the world. But as I say, that put us in a great position to start this boarding kennel, which again is hugely successful. But that enabled me to retire and get back to my true passion of falconry. But the difference now is it's for me. It's not for anybody else. It's the way I want to do it, and I can do it as much as I like. And I've changed the way I do things. I was as a professional. Yes, I was under pressure. We had to, if we were picking new falcons up, which would come to us in June, mid-June, they had to be going and hunting by the 12th of August, beginning of the grouse season. So you had to work to a time scale, which is not always good with a lot of falcons, as we all know. So, but now I can do it in my own way. And I've learned so much from the days as a professional and with the grouse hawking, etc., on my training methods. And I've honed it now into a method that works very, very well. And although I don't grouse hawk now, which I'll go into shortly, the method I use for training would work perfectly for grouse hawking as well as lowland. And let's say now I train everything on lowland. Our terrain over here is massively different to what you guys. I mean, I envy what I see over there. These huge expanses of wide open spaces with little distraction. Very rare in the UK. If you're on the grouse moors, yes, certainly that's available, but it's not always easily accessible. So I train on the lowland in the Midlands area, which is quite unique. We have an abundance of check, lots and lots of stuff that distract the birds, but we train in it. And if you approach it right and you use the right method and the right training program, you can get through it. And I'll fly my team of falcons anywhere with any distraction, but all they're wedded to is the game that we hunt. And I think now the problem we used to have was that, as I say, everything was trained quite quickly and then would spend 2 months being entered on the grouse moor, 2 months hunting up there, come back super fit, experienced hunting birds, and then we'd try and fly these birds on the low ground, which is thick with crows, rooks, pigeons, everything you can think of. And you can imagine the problems that we had with some of the birds, or majority of the birds, to be honest, that trying to take the transition from no distraction on the moor to an abundance of distraction down here. It took some getting through with some falcons. Some never did actually get out of the habit of checking. Whereas now, the method I use, I will train and educate the birds and wed them on the low ground and never have a problem again with check, whether they were flown on grouse or whatever. The reason I don't fly grouse now is not that I don't want to do. I've had some marvellous times and marvellous experiences, but my everyday hawking is on the low ground. And sadly, we don't have an abundance of natural wild game on our lowlands anymore. So most falconers, whether they are long wing, short wing, or whatever, have to look at subsidising the stock and actually releasing game. And I devised a method of successfully releasing particularly grey partridge, or as you refer to them, Huns, successfully for falconry, which both provide sport on a daily basis and good quality sport, but also helps to sustain and improve the natural wild stock. We have ground which 8 years ago had virtually none or very few partridge on there, but are now holding good coveys or good numbers of wild birds if the weather's good for them at hatching time. So it does work hand in hand. And if anybody believes or thinks that release game is inferior, if it's managed properly, it's not. I mean, I can show anybody wild release game that is as wild and as spooky as any naturally produced bird. And it's all about management, because obviously we all want to fly the best quality of quarry available, and that is down to good management. Just to give you an idea, this year I've increased the release program. We'll be releasing around about 700 partridge this year over a vast area. We'll have probably 13, 14 release sites where we release birds from. And this is from the Midlands, where I am, through to Lincolnshire in the east of the country, which, to be fair, is probably the best place for getting high pitches on lowland, because it's very flat, it's very open, big skies, suits the gears and the gear hybrids. Although where I am here, I am blessed with very, very open terrain, so I can go for the big pictures that I like to see. Big pictures are great, but it's always determined by your ground. And if a lot of guys over here only have 50, 60 acre fields, which you can't be flying above 500-foot pitches because you'd be disappointing the Falcons too much. So this is where I find myself now, in this position where obviously releasing this amount of birds and pheasants, we release a certain head of pheasants as well. That's almost a full-time job in itself. So to actually go to Scotland for at least a month, I wouldn't want to do red grouse hawking for anything less than 4 or 5 weeks at a time to get the best out of anything. So if I was to do that, that would have a severe impact then on the game release program, which starts later on this month. So it wouldn't be feasible for me to be away for a month, 6 weeks. That would have a huge impact on the rest of the season. I'm fortunate, as I say, done a lot of grouse hawking, but now my passion is the lowland, and I don't think you could get much better quality of sport even on a moor than what I do now, with the methods I use and how disciplined I am on what I want out of the falcons and the dogs.
Wow, that's a lot of that's a lot of history. That's, it's impressive. I can think of a ton of things that piqued my curiosity with all of the things that you just kind of covered over your history. But in particular, I kind of want to get a little bit better idea of kind of the area. Like, I'm admittedly pretty much a geographical idiot in a lot of ways. It's hard for me to remember where things are kind of in proximity to each other. But, someone in your position, with where you have lived the majority of your life, and you said, kind of going back and forth, between Scotland and kind of where you're at. I mean, how long did it take you to kind of get to these different areas and get into these different types of hawking that you really enjoyed?
Okay. Right. From where we're located in the Midlands, like my journey to grouse camp, if you like, would take me 2 days to get there. Because in the early days, again, I was taking a huge amount of falcons, which were all on cadgers on the back seat and the back of a Range Rover. We had a huge twin axle horse box, which was loaded to the gunwales with all the rest of the equipment. And the estate we were renting at the time was actually out on one of the Outer Hebrides Islands, the Isle of Lewis, which is quite remote. Where we were situated was an hour and a half down a single track road away from any shops or any facilities or whatever. So we basically had to take everything with us for 2 months. So hence with this huge horse box, and it was like a traveling circus. Well, it would take me 2 days to get there. Distance wise, first day I would probably drive maybe about 550 miles on the first day, having to stop regular intervals. Because bear in mind, we had a team of dogs as well, which was usually in the early days 6 pointing dogs, mainly pointers, but a few setters, a few spaniels. So obviously lots of stopping to get there. I'd stop at a hotel overnight on the first night. I'd leave there at 4 o'clock in the morning. Another 100-mile drive to the west coast of Scotland, onto the Isle of Skye, drive to the top of the Isle of Skye, and then catch another ferry, which in the early days would take 2.5 hours to drive over onto the Isle of Harris. And the Isle of Harris and Lewis are connected, so I would then drive another hour up Lewis to where we were stopping. We would rent a local croft, where we would house the birds in a makeshift mews at night, and then we would weather them at the hunting lodge on the estate. And we were there for about 7 or 8 years on that estate every year. So it would 2 days to get there, but obviously when you're there for 2 months, you soon get over it. And especially when you know what you're going to be doing for the next 2 months, the journey is always exciting. So we would stop on there for, say, anything up to 2 months. We would often then come onto the mainland and then go visiting other falconers who the same were renting grouse moors. I'm not one for name dropping, so but we used to go with all the well knowns in the 80s and 90s, and we would be at one estate for a couple of days, and then we'd up sticks and we'd move to somebody else. So it was a bit of a tour around, like a continual field meet every other day. We'd do that, and then we'd drive back to the Midlands. Once we were in the Midlands, when we were back home, we'd normally have 4 or 5 days off to get settled back in, and I would spend a bit of time with the family. And but then it was all steam ahead then, like with the partridge and lowland hawking, which again could be anywhere. It could be 2 or 3 hours down south onto the Downs or whatever, or invitations there out to Norfolk and the eastern areas, and even into Yorkshire, and occasionally to Yorkshire for some grouse hawking. So it was continually travelling. I mean, from the Midlands, most venues were easily accessible. You could travel there in a couple of hours, 2.5 hours. Most times we would spend a night or two stopping over somewhere. So yeah, we did a fair amount of travelling. It was only the Scottish one that was quite a distance to do. Now I have hawking within 10 minutes from home, out to Lincolnshire where my pal is, and that's an hour and a half, which is nothing to speak of. I mean, I can do that there and back in a day, but more often than not, I stay over and we have a couple of days. Well, we normally hawk together out there 3 days a week, 4 days a week usually.
Awesome. Yeah, that's an hour and a half whenever you've done, the 2 day and 2 month, treks. It becomes kind of like nothing. I understand. I've been doing so much traveling this past year in particular. It's almost to the point now where like a 7 or 8 hour drive is like almost nothing now, but yeah, no, I mean, so that's really fascinating to hear, this huge kind of expanse of area that you've covered. But I mean, obviously across the world, all the hawking spots are starting to, dry up, either from, construction, commercialization, et cetera, so on and so forth. Kind of our understanding to a certain degree of how, land management works over in the UK and other parts of Europe. Kind of elaborate on that just a little bit for me, because there's this kind of conception that most everything is, privatized or, hard to access now for the most part, kind of in that area. I mean, what's the actual, landscape look like in your area as far as how hard it is to get to these areas?
Okay, right. Just some basic information on how it works. So we don't have any land that is free hunting at all. All the land is owned by landowners, by councils or whatever. You cannot just go and hunt. This is shooting, hunting, fishing or anything in the UK without permission. Okay, or actually agreement with the landowner buying the sporting rights or whatever. You need permission. The only exception is Scotland, where you can fish certain lochs. You can fish lochs for brown trout anywhere. On moorland and heathland, there is open access for the public, but it's not hunting. The hunting rights are all owned by landowners. Grouse moors by the estate owners, and it's all managed at their expense. The lowland is all arable farming, which again is owned either by small farmers, tenant, or you've got tenant farmers on there, or it's larger landowners. Now, acquiring permission, sporting rights is very difficult. We are a very, very small island, and as you've already touched on, the countryside is being encroached in all directions. One of my prime grey partridge grounds that I've been hawking for 30 years is having a very controversial high-speed railway cutting through 1/4 of it, with no consideration for the wildlife or whatever. It's horrific. My heart bleeds. I go hawking still there, but I see what they're doing to the land, and it's devastating. But anyway, so yes, it's very, very difficult to get the ground. I'm in a very fortunate position, again, through the position I did and the people I met through that position, and also through my years as a gun dog trainer, where I travelled the country field trialing and got very well known and was often called upon by landowners for dogs, etc. So I made a very good contact base. that when I needed ground for hawking, these guys were quite willing to, instead of me going hunting with the dogs on there, to turn it into hawking ground if it was suitable. I'm very, very fortunate that I've got probably more ground than most to hunt on. I do know lads that really struggle. And falconry is getting more and more popular. There's more people after hunting permission. So it is, yes, you have to look after what you have. And it's looking after the landowners. Some ground we pay for, we pay leases on the ground. Others, the landowners are more than happy to have me on there. And I work very closely with the landowners and very much on producing wild game. A lot of the landowners I work with, they have a passion for the grey partridge. They like to see wild game. And I've proved time and time again that falconry and conservation works hand in hand. It's not a numbers game. It's not like shooting. And I have found that it's far easier to acquire land for hawking on than it would be for shooting on. There's a fascination with birds of prey. And that fascination often gets you an invite. And once I found that I'm hunting one piece of ground, I will always take the landowners out anytime they want to come and see it. And you can become a little bit of a sideshow in some ways, whereas they want their friends to see this guy with these hawks on their ground. But that in turn, a day out, taking them out to let them see what we do, can often lead to, well, come onto my ground. I'm the neighbour here. Like, come and do the same on here. And it does open up. If you approach it right with the landowners, I look after my landowners as much as I can. I can talk to them, obviously, with my history. I can talk to them about agriculture and the problems they have. I'm on the same wavelength. I respect the ground and all the rest of it, which they appreciate. And that helps you, like, obviously, get your foot in the door in other areas as well. So it's not easy in the UK, and it's getting harder, and it will get harder. But with the right approach, then, falconry is well capable over here.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder pretty much everywhere in the world right now, unfortunately. And I think it's only going to continue to keep getting harder. And, you know, I make jokes with a lot of my falconer friends that if you don't like, kestrels and sharp-shinned hawks and things like that over here, in the US, you better start liking them, because that's that's pretty much at some point it's it might be all we have game for anymore. But
that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like you've had a very enriching amount of experiences in your life, not just falconry, but with the dog aspect and all that stuff as well. But I guess now would be a good time to go ahead and kind of get into, what led you to make the decision to put your experiences together and, come up with a book and decide to share this knowledge with the rest of the community.
Right. As the listeners have probably realized, I have a deep rooted passion for falconry and hunting. The other, how can I put it? Not a downfall, but the other problem I give myself is I set a very, very high bar. I do everything to the maximum. I look for perfection in everything I do. And in the performance of my falcons and the dogs, I'm looking for the best all the time, trying to raise the bar. And I also look to promote that in the falconry world, to improve and maintain high quality falconry. We have no regulation in the UK, which is very disappointing in a lot of ways, because it's a bit of a free-for-all on ownership of birds of prey. So I am a huge advocate of promoting high quality husbandry and falconry. Many people come out and see me fly and see me work with my team, and often amazed at the level that I insist I get from the team. Just one example, I'm very disciplined on pitches. I like pitches that suit my ground, which are fortunately very high pitches. I will not flush for any of my made birds under 700 feet. And this leaves quite a lot of falcons over here quite bewildered. I insist that's the minimum. And this is the sort of level that I train to, and it creates this fantastic performance from all my falcons. Now, my door is always open to falconers to come out and see what I do, experience what I'm doing, and to learn. And I'm of whatever, hawks, falcons, or whatever, with my experience over the years, I'm always willing to help anybody, with be it a beginner with a Harris hawk or with Goshawks or whatever. So my door's always open. Now, people have trained alongside me that come along. I'll help them train falcons or whatever, and it's clear that I was developing a method that works for UK falconry. And it's been often mentioned that I should put pen to paper. I always refused. I haven't got time for doing that and all this. And writing a book, I've never written more than 3 or 4 pages at a time since I left school. So actually putting something down, it's no, not something I was keen on doing. But anyway, with pressure from certain people and family, and the pressure was mounting over the last few years, because again, the number of people that have been out and used my method and had success over here, improved their own falconry, was saying, you must write something. And I could see there was a bit of a niche in the market coming as well, because vast majority of falconry related books nowadays are historic ones. We're all interested in the history of falconry, but it's all historic. There's very few current ones with explaining and showing current methods with everything that we use nowadays, the modern telemetry, the GPS, drones, all the training aids, whether it's for waiting on or even like for the burr wings, for pursuit flying, all these training aids that are available. There's nothing really current and detailing it. So it was starting to, a few seeds were starting to be planted on the idea of doing it, but I still was a little bit reluctant to do it. Earlier on, last year, 2020, prior to the pandemic, I was getting added pressure from my hawking partner, Ian, 1 or 2 other people, Richard Jones, the hawk vet over here, who's a very, very good falconer. He was insisting on I was doing it. Andrew Ellis, the artist, who's a very, very good friend and falconer. We had a very late night in February last year where all he did was hound me all evening to start writing this book. So, okay, I said, right, well, if I do it, I want Andrew Ellis to be involved with artwork. I want Richard Jones doing an in-depth health and disease chapter. And they agreed. So the one good thing for me that came out of the pandemic and lockdown was that was a good excuse to sit down and try and write something. So every day I put a few hours aside in the morning to start writing. And I started in April last year. And what I thought would be the hard bit, writing it, was actually the easy part. By end of August, I'd actually put it all more or less pen to paper and completed. What I did do, I fired draft copies of it out initially to Ian, my hawking partner. He thinks the same as I do. He would give me his honest opinion quite readily. If it was negative, he'd more than be happy to fire negativities at me. But no, I sent it to him and then to various other falconers, both very experienced falconers that had also written books in the past, falconers who were fairly new to the sport. I just wanted them to read it and give me their feedback on how it read to falconers or somebody who had got an interest in it. And did it come across? Did it explain itself well enough? And out of the 7 or 8 people that I sent it to, the feedback was unbelievable. So we'd completed by the end of August. And that turned out to be the easy part. I was then in a new territory altogether. What do we do from here? Well, fortunately, another good friend of mine, David Horrobin, who does a lot for the British Archives of Falconry over here, proofreads a lot of falconry literature for a lot of books, for the IAF, for their magazine, and has been doing it for years. And he is a falconer. I asked David if he wanted to be on board, and he jumped at the chance to be involved with something that was current and actually about falconry. So David came on board, and we threw ideas backwards and forth, and we tidied it up with the grammar and all the editorial skills that he's got, which obviously we needed to. But he polished it. He corrected my grammar on almost every page, I would think. But anyway, he did his magic. We completed that by the end of January. So the next task was to find a printer and somebody to do the layout and design. I struggled to find anybody that could match my ideas in the UK for the layout and design. And it was through good friend Sheldon Nicole that he mentioned Dan Milner, who I know obviously does the NAFA journals. I made contact with Dan, said, look, this is what I've written. Here's a few chapters, have a read. Do you want to be on board? Dan jumped at the chance. I didn't give him any ideas of what I wanted. I said, well, look, I'm going to fire you a chapter over with some images, put it together, give me some ideas. How would you approach this? And he couldn't have matched my ideas any better. It came back perfect. All the personal touches and everything. So, and Stan was on board. And then we needed to find a printer. And I'd recently had a book at Christmas bought to me by my wife, the George Lodge Diaries. Very, very nice book. Very nicely produced by a UK printer down in Cornwall. So obviously having their book in my hands, I approached them, set up a fantastic relationship, and I'd got what I call just the A team for producing the book, which we all work very well together. My wife is an avid photographer. She's always taking pictures and does amazing work, even just with an iPhone. And with my collection of photos from years gone by and Dan's skill at photoshopping and tidying them up and doing all the rest, we produced a book with fantastic pictures. And I think a book needs to have pictures. It needs to have illustrate, but images that people can relate to. They can read it and they can see it. And I know from when I was a child, in my old falconry books, which are on my bookcase now, the first thing I did was look at the pictures, and I looked at these pictures time and time again in the book. And I always know through all my old falconry books where the best pictures are, because you can see the corners of the pages thumbed. But it was important to put a lot of pictures and a lot of detailed pictures in there, because a picture can speak 1,000 words or more. So it was important to get good quality, informative pictures in there. And yeah, I was just overwhelmed by how it turned out and how well it's been received. We produced a collector's version, which I know a lot of falconers are avid book collectors and they like the specials. And I did the special leather-bound edition of 150 copies, which were actually almost sold out before they were even printed, which just was astounding. And then since we had the books printed and it was only came out available at the beginning of June, it's sold beyond my wildest dreams. And the feedback I've had has been tremendous. And you guys in the States have just, how many has been in touch and bought the book has just been phenomenal. And I can't thank you enough. It's great. It's you'll read it. It's a lot different in a lot of ways to what you guys do. But on the back of the book, I've had conversations with many guys from the States on game releasing, which you may well be needing to look at in the future for sustainable hawking. So it's some of the methods will be adaptable over there, but it gives you an idea of what we do over here and the way I do it and the disciplines I put into my sport, which raises the bar. And if that book just helps a few falconers improve what they do, then I'll be more than satisfied.
Well, that's outstanding. I'm, as another, as an artist and, someone else who, obviously puts out things they do, for people to, get whatever they're going to get out of it. I can certainly relate to it. It's always nice, whenever people positively receive and get a lot out of something that you've kind of put a lot of work and a lot of soul into. So, congratulations on that. And, I'm happy for you that it's been received so well. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned, kind of the, it's like the whole game release and the game farm type of thing. That's another kind of one of those, potentially polarizing conversations that you can have within our community. I definitely need to, admittedly, I have kind of been here, there, and everywhere over, like I said, the past several months. So I also need to pick up your book and check it out as well. And, I haven't had just a whole heck of a lot of time to, get into, the different hobbies that I have, unfortunately, with as much as I've, kind of been around. I've done my best, but I've also recently tried to narrow down my personal hobbies as well, because I was just hemorrhaging money and, on a lot of different things. And I do still collect, falconry books as well. Just kind of started getting into that not too long ago. So I definitely need to pick up your book as well and check it out, and look forward to doing so. But this would be another good chance to discuss, kind of, you mentioned having, some relationships with, other falconers and some of our organizations over here in the US. I would really like to kind of go into now kind of how you developed or kind of collaborated with the Falconry Fund on this current sweepstakes that's being held, and kind of how that came to fruition also.
Yeah, how it came about was I've been a member of NAFA for a long time. I'm always interested, and I watch what happens with falconry in the States. Always been a keen follower. Never ventured out there yet myself, but it's on the cards, that's for sure. But no, I've been involved with that. And then up through lockdown, the virtual Muse tours came about. So although it was very early hours for me, I think the earliest one for with the time difference would be midnight for us over here. But yeah, so I was prepared to do it. We're in lockdown. We've not got a lot else going off. So I joined in. I joined the meetings, the tours, and I think they probably got fed up with a lot of my questions at the time. I was wanting to know as much as I could about how you guys do it and how you keep your hawks and your falcons and how it goes there. And I built up good rapport with quite a number of guys. And after being on the virtual tours, I was having conversations and Zoom chats with various guys from all over the States on one or two things. And then Sheldon asked me if I'd be prepared to do one here, to let those guys see how we do it. So I agreed. It was at a more civil time for us. I think it was about 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And I did a small tour of my facilities here, and I touched again on the game release. I showed an area where I hold game before it goes out for releasing, and that again stimulated interest. On the back of that, I was then asked to do a presentation for NAFA for the virtual meet during the weekend. Obviously, like your main field meeting was cancelled, but they had the virtual one. So I was asked to do a presentation on how I game release over here. So I put that together. I think for me, that was 2 o'clock in the morning. That one, so again, another late night, but we did it. And I feel it was received very, very well. I think it was gone 4 o'clock in the morning by the time I left the meeting, because there was questions. And again, I was making good contacts. I met Mark, who mentioned on his tour that about the Falconry Fund. So I had a look, and yeah, fantastic idea. So yeah, I'd made these associates over there. As the book sales came along, I had an inquiry from Carter, who is on the Falconry Fund, who obviously works alongside it. And he was asking me various questions about the book, and we started chatting about a few things. He then put an idea to me. He said, we may be looking at trying to do a fundraiser. He said, what would it cost for somebody to come and spectate falconry in the UK? And for me, there is no cost. I would never look to charge any falconer, and I don't think there are many falconers in the UK that would do that. You would never pay to spectate. We would be more than happy to let people see what we do, whether they're from the USA, from the UK, or whatever. It's all about educating other falconers and experiencing and meeting other falconers, and the pleasure that we would get of showing other falconers from another country what we do and how we work over here would be great. It would never be dreamt to charge anybody for that. So I said to Carter, look, I can arrange with my contacts, I can arrange you a fantastic week to 10 days hawking. All it will cost you is your flights, accommodation, and obviously hire of a vehicle. The rest is free of charge, and I'll get you the best I can. So between us, we started formulating a plan of time scale, etc. We were originally looking towards October, but we've had a very, very poor spring this year, very late cold spell, which have delayed and had a severe impact on the red grouse breeding this year, because obviously red grouse are naturally produced. There's no grouse reared and released. They are naturally produced. So a lot of the estates are putting all their sporting activities back a month. So we decided to go to November. I know all you guys over there probably think of red grouse hawking, and Scotland is the place to go. And it is. It has some fantastic grouse hawking and a lot of history up there, but it brings its issues. Weather for a start. To see good grouse hawking, you don't want to be there in August. You want to be there a couple of months in, when the grouse are obviously at the prime condition. But the downside is then that much further north, the weather can have a major impact. Grouse numbers on the hawking moors in Scotland are not what they used to be. Whereas I've got contacts for grouse hawking in Yorkshire, and I've got fellow falconers who do hawk on some phenomenal grouse moors. Now, these are some of the most prestigious driven grouse moors in the country. Absolutely immaculately managed estates, abundance of grouse. And yes, you can have poor weather there like anywhere, but my line of thought was that if we're only in Yorkshire and the weather is inclement and not suitable for one type of hawking, I can easily move whoever's there to another venue to do something else. It's 2 hours from where I live. So the plan was to try and show as much falconry. I said to Carter, I said, do you want a leisurely 10 days or a jam-packed all-action 10 days where you're going to need a holiday at the end of it to recover? He said, that's the one we want, he said. So I set about, it will commence with red grouse hawking, and then it will move down into the Midlands and across to Lincolnshire, where it'll be a mixture of lowland game hawking with falcons, eagles. I've got some eagle guys lined up for eagles on brown hares, and then finishing with some excellent goshawks on pheasants and partridge for the very last day. We have got options that if a day is not suitable for hawking, we can arrange, I can arrange a visit to the British Archives of Falconry, various other things. So we're trying to cover all angles. I've offered time with me on dog training, on hunting dog training. I will be there. I won't be there for all of the days, but because I shall be right into the middle of my hunting, but I'll be guiding everybody, and the guys that are going to be there, and the hawks and the falcons, it's going to be first class. They're going to have a fantastic time.
No, it sounds amazing. And it sounds like an amazing opportunity for, anyone that is lucky enough to win that particular sweepstakes. And I believe, and I looking on the website right now, which you can find on falconryfund.org is where the information for this is. But I believe it's only a $50 contribution or something that gets you entered, correct?
That's correct. I mean, it's got to be worth going. I mean, for a small donation for that, for what you could possibly win, and the main factor is it's raising money for an excellent cause.
Of course,
an excellent cause. That's first and foremost. But the opportunity that is there for a couple of guys to come and witness what we do here, just a totally different type of falconry in a lot of ways. It'll open your eyes to what we deal with over here, but what is obviously capable within restricted terrain and countryside and all the rest of it. But then to see a wide variety. I mean, it may just be long wingers that are coming over and have not seen the quality of pheasant hawking we do with goshawks over here. So, or the eagles, that might be a new experience for somebody. There'll be something for everybody, and there'll be new experiences for everybody. And it's for a smaller donation like that, it's got to be worth going for.
Oh, no question. And, it sounds like you're going to have a hard time. I mean, just from my logic and reasoning standpoint, you're going to have a hard time, finding a trip that you can go on where you're getting such a wide variety, of hawking it just covered all at the same time. I don't know of very many other, I don't know of very many other opportunities you can have to it's kind of mind blowing when you think about it. But just to clarify, I mean, how much area, I mean, like how much, as far as just the different places that people will get to go on this trip, what's the variety of area that's going to be covered, or what's the
Right, okay. The grouse hawking, I believe they're flying into Manchester, and the grouse hawking, which is they'll be moving to the first venue, that's about an hour and a half from the airport. And the beauty about this moor, it's very, very accessible. So yes, there's obviously an element of walking, etc. It's the actual acreage of the moor. To be honest, I couldn't tell. It's probably 10 or 12,000 acre, but it's a prime grouse moor, and you don't have to cover a lot of ground to find game. There are some superb dogs as well. I must say that as well. The guys who are there have a superb team of dogs, pointers and setters. So yeah, you can see how we hunt the dogs over here on grouse. So that's for 3 days, and it's all in the Yorkshire region. Then from there may be a 2-hour drive down to me. The plan is at the moment on the Friday, move down to me in the Midlands. We could have an afternoon then on lowland hawking here, and then we will drive out to Lincolnshire, which again is about an hour and a half's drive, to some superb accommodation there, which they'll be staying there for the following 3 nights. And it'll be a mixture. Then we'll be judging the weather conditions and what is the best sport. So it could be eagles, it could be long wings at pheasants and partridge, all within half an hour's drive of where they're staying. And then on the Monday, after the final day's hunting in Lincolnshire, we'll travel back to my area again, which is an hour and a half, 2 hours, for the Monday night, ready for goshawking early start the following morning, which will be the last morning. And then we will be planning a last night dinner get together for everybody, to have a nice reminisce of what they've experienced.
Yeah, that's that'll probably end up going in well into the wee hours of the morning would be my guess. But no, I mean it sounds like an incredible offer, and yeah, I mean everybody that's listening, we definitely encourage you to look into it. I mean, plus you get $1,000 in spending money and a signed copy of your book, and
yes, that's right. There's a and it's the special edition. It's the limited edition, which is now sold out. Won't be available. There'll be no more of those printed. I have one of those numbered and signed, ready to hand over to whoever's successful. And as I say, I will be here any time spent with me. Anybody wants to pick away at my knowledge, and I'm more than welcome. I'm more than happy to share anything I can with anybody. So it'll be a fantastic 10 days.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth looking into, and like I said, I know I'm going to go ahead and probably contribute the $50 just like I said, to help out, and feel like I do my part as well on it. And like I said, if like it's one of those things that I don't see an opportunity like this coming up very often. And so like I said, please look into it. Head to falconryfund.org and do a little bit of homework. And if it sounds appealing to you, which I can't imagine that it wouldn't, I can't imagine a trip like this wouldn't appeal to most falconers. But yeah,
all I will say is, if anybody wants to see a little taster of what we do, I've got a Facebook page. Visit my Facebook page. Send me a friend request. I've got lots of videos on there of lowland hawking that I do, just to give you a bit of a taster. So by all means, have a look at that. You'll see that. I've got lots of other, I think on my NAFA membership page, there is a film on there as well, a compilation film, if anybody wanted to see that, of a couple of seasons ago, of the whole season. So just to give you an idea of what we do and what part of what you'll be experiencing.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've covered, a lot of good stuff in this podcast, but I definitely want to end on a note. I usually ask the guests that come on if they could share one of their favorite or their favorite most memorable hawking story. And I usually like to end on that note. So if you'd be willing to share, I know over all these years, you've got to have, you got to have so many, and it's hard just to pick one, but if there's one in particular that sticks out in your mind, go ahead and share.
Right. Okay. It's, as I say, I've got so many from over the years, particularly on grouse and going back years and all the rest of it. But what I think I will have to mention is a bird that I'm currently flying now. This bird is a Geo Barbary. He's 7 times intermewed. Out of all the falcons I've flown, all the falcons I've seen, I've never had anything like this boy. He's just amazing. He's actually the bird on the front cover of the book. Holds a very, very special place, but his whole performance, and I'm going to tell you about one of his spectacular flights, and how this bird can fly and can operate. But I've never had a bird so consistent, so loyal, so successful. All he ever hunts is partridge, and never ever looks at anything else. He's phenomenal. Sonic, we call him. He has lots of other names, but that's his official name. But this boy, his average pitch for the season is around about 900 feet. He's a 74% success rate. Probably one of his all-time best flights, and this just shows on how he can command a situation. We were out in Lincolnshire, and we were scanning a field of cover crop. Well, it was one that farmers over here now get subsidies to plant. They refer to it as a cover crop or a green fertilizer, and they get subsidies to plant this crop to overwinter and then plough in, so it's more natural fertilizer in the spring. Well, this has the advantage for anybody who's hunting because it holds game. And we were scanning this particular area for pheasants. Didn't see a pheasant at all. And just as we moved, and we hadn't seen it, it was so close, a large covey of wild grey partridge lifted from virtually at the side of the road, got unsighted by us and flew right out into the middle of this huge expanse. So we got a good mark on it. There was 4 of us there, me, my pal, and our wives. And we marked this covey down way out into this cover crop. Perfect flight for Sonic, because this bird can just hold anything down, and let him go in his own time. And he just climbed and climbed and climbed. But all the time, he has an uncanny ability to know to mount above where the game is. And he climbed, and he was getting up well into the heavens. And the thing I like about this falcon, he will, when I start to walk in, and we were a long way out. We were 400-500 yards probably from the mark. And when we start to walk, he continues to climb. And once he was back over us, he just commanded the whole area, and just without missing a wing beat. I mean, he just eventually disappeared. He was so high. We started closing in, and obviously these partridge had been moved once, not purposely, but they'd been moved once. They'd obviously would be very edgy, and this bird is not just watching me, he's aware of everything that's going off around us. And these partridge lifted, we cast the dogs off knowing we were getting to the area, but when you're looking at a mark from that distance, you can never pinpoint it. You know you're in the area. GPS showed him like out of sight, well over like the 4-figure pitch, and the partridge lifted slightly prematurely, but way out from us. But no need to worry, he was just commanding it, and he just like from a bird at that pitch, you don't see anything. You hear the roar, and we saw the last 300 feet. And the thing is with him as well, which one of his techniques, he will often appear to stoop way behind the quarry when it's going away. Some days it looks so far behind, but he just roars through. And again, in this particular instance, which I've seen him do many times, he went straight through the covey and took the lead bird out, which was obviously the first bird that flushed. Lead bird out of the covey, went through, I think there was 12 or 13 in the covey, cleanly bound to his lead bird. And it's no effort for him to do it. It's just, that's one of many memorable flights. And thankfully, the amazing thing about this bird is that 85% of his flights are like that. They're just epic. And you could describe that every season from a number of flights. But that one in particular, with it being a true wild covey of greys, very difficult mark, long way out, had to command the position, held him down, and even took them on when they flushed early, was just phenomenal. He's just a super bird. Wow. He's the apple of my eye. But I don't let the wife hear me say that too often.
Well, if you're anything like most falconers, I think most significant others are used to hearing such banter at this point. It's hard to it's hard to find a falconry household that it seems like there's at least one bird that the falconer is just as enamored with as the significant other. So that's it. Well, that was an awesome story, and thank you again so much for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us, and taking the time. I mean, we're time flies. We're already about an hour and 15 minutes here, and
I told you you'd have to shut me up. So.
Well, I'm getting ready to shut both of us up here. Yeah. But I think this was a great conversation, and it was pretty informative, and I think that a lot of people will enjoy it. So thank you again so much. And like I said, for anyone that's interested, I'm also you can also refer back to the beginning of the podcast as well. I also will put the information for the sweepstakes at the very beginning of the show as well. So I hope more people look into it. And like I said, it's going to be a great opportunity for anyone that can possibly invest. And if nothing else, just they're willing to give to a good cause. So like I said, I think this is going to be a good spot to go ahead and call it good. And, we'll talk just a little bit more after I end the recording here, but thank you again so much. And have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon, I hope.
John, thank you very much indeed. Really enjoyed it. And I hope the listeners have got a bit of pleasure from it.
I'm sure they will. Thank you. And we'll talk again soon.
Cheers.